They say the eyes that judge too quickly often fail to see what walks beside a person. In Agbọn Village, they whispered that Sade, the new bride, did not walk alone, that shadows followed her, even under the sun. They feared she carried misfortune, but what they did not know was that the unseen around her were the only thing standing between them and a darkness far worse. If you were in that village, would you fear her or protect her? Tell us below. In Agbọn Village, where red earth roads curved like ancient stories, and the wind carried whispers from the past, the arrival of a new bride was usually a moment of joy. Women would sing, children would dance, and elders would gather to bless the union. But when Sade arrived, silence followed her like a shadow no one could ignore. Kunlay, her husband, walked beside her, with a gentle pride though. His steps were not as firm as he wished them to be. He loved her, this much was true. But love in a village ruled by tradition, and the heavy weight of elders' opinions was often not enough. Welcome her properly, Kunlay said, softly to the small crowd gathered at the compound. But the women only exchanged glances. Mama Aduni stood at the front, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist, her sharp eyes scanning Sade from head to toe. There was no warmth in her gaze, only suspicion. So this is the woman you brought into my house, she said, her voice calm but cold. Sade lowered her eyes respectfully. Good evening, Mama. I greet you. Her voice was soft, almost carried away by the wind. Yet something about it made the nearby leaves tremble. Mama Aduni did not miss it. She muttered. Even the wind listens when she speaks. A few women chuckled nervously. That was how it began. From that very first evening, things felt different. As Sade stepped into the compound, a sudden breeze swept through, lifting the edge of her wrapper. The hanging gourds clinked softly, though no one else had moved. A baby tied to its mother's back began to cry, but the moment Sade turned her head slightly, the child fell silent, staring at her with wide, unblinking eyes. Did you see that? One woman whispered. I told you. Something is not right, another replied. Sade said nothing. She simply walked inside. Days passed, but the air in the compound never settled. Sade moved quietly, doing her chores before anyone asked, fetching water at dawn, sweeping the yard before the rooster crowed, cooking without complaint. Yet no matter how gentle she was, the eyes that followed her were always heavy with doubt. At night, when the moon hung low and the village slept, Sade would sit outside alone, and sometimes she spoke. Not loudly, not clearly, just whispers. Kunlay noticed it first. One night, he woke to find her missing from their mats. He stepped outside and saw her seated under the old Iroko tree, her back straight, her head slightly tilted as if listening. Sade, he called softly. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she murmured something under her breath, words he could not understand. Then she turned. You should go back inside, she said gently. The night is not always empty. Kunlay frowned. Who were you speaking to? Sade held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked away. No one you can see. A chill ran down his spine. The next morning, Mama Aduni called him aside. I have been watching your wife, she said, her voice low but firm. She does not behave like a woman who has come in peace. Kunlay sighed. Mama, she's just quiet. Not everyone. She speaks to the air. Kunlay. Mama Aduni cut in sharply, and the air answers. Kunlay hesitated. He wanted to defend Sade. He wanted to believe there was nothing to fear. But even he could not deny what he had seen. Later that day, as Sade returned from the stream, with a clay pot balanced on her head, a sudden gust of wind circled around her, lifting dust into the air. The other women stepped back instinctively. She carries something with her, one of them whispered. Or something follows her, another added. Sade paused for just a second. Her fingers tightened slightly around the pot, and for a brief moment, her lips moved again, as if speaking to something only she could hear. Then, she continued walking, her face calm, but her eyes filled with a quiet, heavy knowing. In Agbọn Village, fear had already taken root. And once fear grows, it does not leave easily. They say, when fear finds a home in the human heart, it does not sit quietly. It grows, it spreads, and soon it begins to speak louder than truth. In Agbọn Village, it did not take long before fear found its voice. It began with the goats. One morning, a herder named Tunde woke to find two of his strongest goats lying still, their bodies cold, their eyes wide open as if they had seen something before death came. "There are no wounds," he said, his voice shaking as the villagers gathered. "Nothing touched them, but they are gone." The murmurs started immediately. "Since that woman came, I said it from the beginning." Mama Aduni stood among them, her arms crossed her lips, pressed into a thin line. "This is not ordinary," she declared. "We are not blind." But that was only the beginning. Within days, the crops near the edge of the village began to wither. Green leaves turned brown overnight. Yams rotted in the ground before they could be harvested. Even the stream, once clear and singing, flowed slower, as if something unseen was weighing it down. And every path of blame led to one person, Sade. At the market where voices were once loud and laughter, easy silence now followed her like a shadow. As she approached, conversations died. Eyes turned, whispers rose. "Do not buy from her," a woman warned quietly. "Who knows what she carries?" Sade stood by a small stall, her hands steady but her heart heavy. She had prepared food carefully, hoping to contribute to belong. But no one came, not even a child. Finally, a voice cut through the tension. "You should not be here." It was Mama Aduni. She stepped forward, her presence commanding her, gaze sharp as a blade. "This place is for people who bring life, not death." A few villagers nodded. Sade swallowed her voice, trembling but controlled. "I have done nothing wrong, Mama. Nothing, Mama." Aduni scoffed. "Then explain the goats. Explain the crops. Or do you expect us to believe these things happen for no reason?" Sade's eyes flickered not with guilt, but with something deeper. Pain, fear, and something else, restraint. "I cannot explain what you refuse to understand," she said softly. The crowd reacted immediately. "Listen to her, she speaks in riddles, she is hiding something." One woman stepped forward and knocked over Sade's basket. The food scattered across the dusty ground. "Take your darkness away from us," she shouted. Sade did not fight back. She knelt slowly, her fingers trembling as she gathered what she could. Dust clung to the food, making it useless. Around her, the voices grew louder, sharper, more cruel. "Why won't you speak the truth?" someone demanded. "Because she cannot," another answered. "Her truth will destroy us." Through it all, Sade remained silent, not because she had nothing to say, but because she knew saying it might be worse. From a distance, an old man watched. Baba Ifa Seagun, the village diviner, leaned on his carved staff. His eyes narrowed as he observed the scene. Unlike the others, his gaze was not filled with fear but with careful thought. He had seen many things in his lifetime. Spirits, signs, warnings hidden in the ordinary. And what he saw around Sade was not what the others believed. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the land, Baba Ifa Seagun approached her quietly. "You carry something," he said. Sade stiffened but did not turn. "Yes," she replied after a pause. "But it is not what they think." Slowly she faced him. For the first time, someone saw the truth in her eyes, not darkness but burden. "Then tell me," Baba Ifa Seagun said gently. "What walks with you?" Sade hesitated. The wind shifted slightly, brushing past them like a warning. Her lips parted, then closed again. "I cannot," she whispered. The old man studied her carefully, then nodded. "I see," he murmured. "Not cast." He tapped his staff softly against the ground, but watched. Sade's breath caught. Behind her, unseen by most, the air shimmered for just a moment like heat rising from the earth. And then it was gone. But Baba Ifa Seagun had seen enough. And deep within him, a quiet truth began to form. In Agbọn Village, they believed Sade had brought misfortune. But the old man knew misfortune was already there. It had simply been waiting. They say truth does not shout, it waits. And when it is ignored long enough, it reveals itself in ways no one can control. In Agbọn Village, the waiting was almost over. That evening, the compound of Mama Aduni was heavier than usual. Even the firewood cracked with an uneasy rhythm, as if the flames themselves sensed the growing tension. Mama Aduni sat on a low stool, her back straight, her face carved from stone. "Kunlay," she called. He stepped forward slowly. "You will send her away." The words fell like a verdict. Kunlay's chest tightened. "Mama, please, you cannot ask me to do that." "I am not asking," she replied sharply. "I am telling you what must be done." Sade stood at the edge of the courtyard, her hands folded in front of her, her expression calm, but her silence was not empty. It was heavy, weighted. Everything began when she came, Mama Aduni continued. The deaths, the rot, the fear. And you still stand here defending her. Kunlay turned to Sade, desperation in his eyes. "Say something, please." Sade looked at him. For a moment, the world seemed to quiet around them. Then she shook her head gently. "There are things you are not ready to hear," she said. Mama Aduni laughed bitterly. "Listen to her. Always secrets, always silence. That is how darkness hides." "She's not darkness," Kunlay snapped, surprising even himself. Mama Aduni stood abruptly. "Then prove it. Let her speak. Let her tell us what follows her at night." All eyes turned to Sade. The air felt tight. Even the wind held its breath. But Sade said nothing, and in that silence judgment was sealed. "Enough," Mama Aduni declared. "If she cannot defend herself, then she has already confessed." Kunlay's voice broke. "Mama, she leaves," Mama Aduni said firmly, "before she destroys us all." That night the village slept uneasily, but not everyone slept. Hidden behind the thick trunk of an ancient Iroko tree, Baba Ifa Seagun watched. He had followed Sade quietly, his old steps, careful, his breath measured. Sade stood alone in the open, clearing her face turned toward the sky. The moonlight touched her skin, casting a soft glow, but what stood around her was not of this world. At first it was only a shimmer, then slowly shapes began to form, tall, silent, watching. They were not fully seen yet, not entirely hidden. Like spirits caught between light and shadow, Sade did not flinch. "You should not come closer," she whispered. Her voice was not meant for any human ears. Baba Ifa Seagun froze. The air around him grew colder. One of the figures turned slightly as if it sensed him. The old man's heart pounded. But he did not move. "I am still here," Sade continued softly. "I have not failed." The wind rose gently, circling her like a quiet response. Then, something shifted. For a brief moment, the space around her glowed faintly like embers breathing in the dark. Baba Ifa Seagun's eyes widened. This was no curse. This was protection. But protection from what? The figures began to fade, dissolving back into the night as if they had never been there. Only Sade remained, alone, or so it would seem to anyone who had not witnessed the truth. The old man stepped back slowly, his mind racing. "Not cursed," he whispered to himself. He tightened his grip on his staff. "Chosen." Meanwhile, back in the compound, Kunlay sat in silence, his thoughts tangled in fear and doubt. He loved Sade, but the village, his mother, the signs. What if they were right? What if love had blinded him? He buried his face in his hands. "I do not understand you," he murmured. Outside, the wind brushed against the walls, carrying with it a faint, almost human whisper. And far away in the shadows of the forest, something unseen stirred, restless, waiting. In Agbọn Village, a decision had been made, but the truth they refused to hear was already moving toward them. And soon, it would no longer ask for permission to be seen. They say when a people choose fear over understanding, they begin to fight what was sent to protect them. In Agbọn Village, that moment had come. At dawn, the shrine of the village stood restless beneath the rising sun. It was a sacred place where elders called upon unseen forces for guidance, for cleansing, for truth. But that day, it was not peace they sought. It was removal. "Bring her," Mama Aduni commanded. Her voice carried across the gathering crowd, firm and unshaken. Sade was led forward not by force but by expectation. The villagers parted as she walked, leaving a path lined with suspicion and quiet hostility. No one touched her, but no one stood beside her either. Kunlay followed behind, his face pale, his steps uncertain. "This is not right," he said under his breath. But no one listened. At the center of the shrine stood Baba Seagun, his expression heavy. Before him burned a small fire, its flame flickering uneasily, as if it sensed what was to come. This ritual, he began slowly, should not be taken lightly. Mama Aduni stepped forward. "Then let it not be delayed. If she is clean, let the spirits show it. If she is not, then we will know." All eyes turned to Sade. She stood still, not defiant, not afraid, just ready. Baba Seagun studied her one last time. There was something in her gaze, a quiet warning buried beneath layers of restraint. But the will of the village had already moved beyond caution. "Step forward," he said. Sade obeyed. The old man began the ritual, chanting softly, his staff tapping rhythmically against the earth. The fire flickered, then steadied, then flickered again. "Spirits of this land," he called, his voice rising, "if there is darkness upon this woman, reveal it. If there is truth hidden, bring it to light." The air shifted. A wind rose suddenly, swirling around the shrine. The villagers murmured, stepping back. "This is it," someone whispered. But then, the fire went out, just like that. No spark, no smoke, only silence. A gasp rippled through the crowd. "This is a sign," Mama Aduni exclaimed. "The spirits reject her." But Baba Seagun did not move. His eyes remained fixed on Sade, because what he felt was not rejection. It was resistance. The wind grew stronger. Dust lifted from the ground, spinning in circles around Sade's feet. Her wrapper fluttered violently, but she did not step back. Instead, she closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. The word was almost lost in the wind, but Baba Seagun heard it. And so did something else. The ground trembled just slightly, enough to silence the crowd. "What is happening?" a woman cried. Sade opened her eyes. For the first time, fear was visible in them. Not for herself, but for them. "I told you," she said, her voice stronger, now carried clearly through the chaos. "If I leave," the wind howled louder, "what follows me will not stay behind." A loud crack echoed from the shrine's wooden pillars. The sacred carvings shook as if something beneath the earth had shifted. Children began to cry. Men stepped back. Even Mama Aduni's expression flickered with uncertainty, but only for a moment. "This is her doing," she shouted, trying to hold control. "She is showing us her true power." "No, Baba," Seagun said sharply. All heads turned. "This is not her power." His voice was firm, cutting through the fear. "This is what holds back what you do not see." Silence fell again. But this time, it was different. He stepped closer to Sade. "What are you holding?" he asked quietly. Sade's lips trembled. For so long she had kept it inside. For so long she had protected them without being understood. And now, they were forcing it to the surface. "I am not the danger," she said, her voice breaking. The wind slowed slightly. The ground stilled, but the air remained heavy. "I am the cage." The words hung in the air like a truth too heavy to carry. Some villagers looked confused, others afraid. But Mama Aduni shook her head. "Enough of these riddles," she snapped. "We will not be deceived." She turned to the crowd. Whether she speaks truth or lies, one thing is clear: since she came, peace has left us. She pointed toward the edge of the village. She must go. Kunlay stepped forward, panic rising in his chest. Mama, please, listen. But the villagers had already begun to move. Fear had spoken. And once fear is heard, it rarely listens in return. They say, when truth is spoken, but not believed, it does not disappear. It waits for the moment when denial can no longer stand. In Agbọn Village, that moment was approaching. The crowd began to disperse from the shrine, but not in peace. Voices overlapped, sharp and restless, as if everyone feared what had just happened, but refused to name it. She called herself a cage. What does that even mean? It means she is dangerous. Mama Aduni walked ahead of them all, her chin lifted, her steps quick and decisive. Doubt had touched her, but pride would not allow it to stay. We end this today, she declared. Before night falls, she leaves this village. Kunlay felt the ground beneath him slipping. He turned, searching for Sade. She stood alone just beyond the shrine, her shoulders slightly lowered now, not in defeat but in exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long. Sade, Kunlay rushed to her. She did not look at him immediately. Instead, her eyes were fixed on the forest in the distance. Igbo-ase, as if something there was calling to her, or waiting. You have to tell me the truth, Kunlay said, his voice shaking. I cannot protect you if I do not understand. Sade finally turned. There was no anger in her eyes, only sorrow. I was never meant to be protected, she said quietly. Kunlay frowned. Then why? Because what is inside me? She paused, her voice catching for the first time. Must never be free. A cold silence fell between them. Before Kunlay could speak again, another voice joined them. She speaks the truth. It was Baba Ifa Seagun. He approached slowly, his staff pressing into the earth with each step, his expression grave. Kunlay turned to him. Baba, please, tell me what is happening. The old man looked from Kunlay to Sade, then back again. For many years, he began, there has been a force buried deep within the lands beyond Igbo-ase. A force that was not meant to walk among men. Kunlay's breath slowed. It was sealed long ago, Baba Ifa Seagun continued. Not by chains, but by sacrifice. He gestured towards Sade. A child was chosen, one strong enough to carry what others could not. Kunlay's eyes widened. No, yes, the old man said gently. From the day she was born, Sade was marked. The spirits did not follow her because she is cursed. They follow her because they guard the seal. Sade lowered her gaze. I have lived my whole life like this, she whispered, moving from place to place, never staying too long, never letting anyone get too close. Kunlay stepped back slightly, the weight of her words pressing into him. And if you stay here, he asked. Baba Ifa Seagun answered this time. Then the seal remains strong, the watchers remain, the balance holds. And if she leaves? The old man's silence was answer enough. But Sade spoke anyway. Then, what is inside me? She looked toward the forest again. Will no longer be contained. Kunlay's heart pounded. All this time, all the fear, all the blame, and the truth was the opposite of what they believed. We have to tell them, he said urgently. They need to know. Baba Ifa Seagun shook his head slowly. Fear has already taken root, he said, and pride is guarding it. Kunlay clenched his fists. Then I will make them listen. He turned and ran back toward the village, his voice already rising. But behind him, Sade remained still. They will not hear him, she said softly. Baba Ifa Seagun watched her carefully. You are thinking of leaving, he said. Sade did not deny it. If I stay, she said, they will tear themselves apart, trying to drive me out. If I go, she hesitated. The wind stirred faintly around her. At least the truth will reveal itself. The old man's grip tightened on his staff. That truth may come at a cost too great for them to bear. Sade closed her eyes briefly. I know. In the distance, the village stirred with rising voices as Kunlay tried desperately to be heard, but his words were drowned in doubt. Mama Aduni stood firm among them, her voice cutting through his pleas. We do not need stories, she said. We need safety. And so the decision was sealed not by truth but by fear. As the sun began to fall and shadows stretched across Agbọn Village, Sade took her first step toward the edge of the forest. Behind her, unseen but ever present, the watchers moved with her. And deep beneath the earth, something ancient shifted, waiting. They say when protection is mistaken for danger, the gates are opened not by enemies, but by the hands of the fearful. In Agbọn Village, the gates had just been opened. Sade walked slowly toward the edge of Igbo Ase, her footsteps quiet against the red earth. The village behind her grew smaller, with each step its voices fading into a distant echo of anger and confusion. No one followed her. No one, except Kunlay. Sade wait. His voice broke through the stillness as he ran, breathless desperation driving his every step. She stopped. For a moment she did not turn. I told them, Kunlay said, his chest rising and falling. I told them everything. Baba's words your truth, but they would not listen. Sade closed her eyes briefly. I knew they wouldn't, she replied softly. Kunlay stepped closer. Then don't go, please. If you leave, I have already left, she said, turning to face him. Her eyes were calm now. Not heavy, not burdened, just resolved. Behind her, the forest stood waiting, its shadows deeper than before. I cannot fight their fear, she continued. And I will not stay where I am seen as a curse. Kunlay's voice trembled. But you are not, you are. A prison, she finished gently. The word lingered between them. Kunlay shook his head. Then let me stand with you. Let me a. Sudden sound cut him off. Low, deep, like something shifting beneath the earth. They both froze. The wind stopped. The birds fell silent. And then, a second sound, louder, cracking. From the direction of the village, Kunlay turned. In the distance, a dark cloud seemed to rise not into the sky but along the ground, moving like smoke that had forgotten how to lift. What is that? He whispered. Sade did not answer, because she already knew. Back in Agbọn Village, chaos had begun. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing against the skin of every villager. The sun dimmed not by clouds but by something darker, something that swallowed light instead of blocking it. Children screamed. Men grabbed weapons they did not know how to use. The earth trembled again. What is happening? Someone cried. Mama Aduni stood at the center of the compound, her strong posture faltering for the first time. This is not her doing, she whispered. The realization struck too late. From the ground near the shrine, a deep crack spread outward, splitting the earth like a wound reopening. A faint glow seeped from beneath, not bright, not warm, but wrong. The air carried a sound now, not quite a voice, not quite a growl, but something in between, something waking up. Baba Seagun stood at the edge of the shrine, his face pale. The seal, he breathed. It is breaking. He turned toward the forest, his voice rising with urgency. She has gone too far. Back at the forest's edge, Sade's body stiffened. She felt it, the shift, the breaking, the thing she had carried for so long, reaching outward. The watchers around her flickered into faint visibility, tall, glowing figures, forming a circle, their presence stronger now, more urgent. They are losing hold, Sade whispered. Kunlay grabbed her arm. Then, we have to go back. Sade hesitated. For the first time, fear entered her eyes. Not fear of the village, but of what would happen if she returned too late. They drove you away, Kunlay said, his voice breaking. But they don't understand what they've done. Please, don't let them pay for it. Sade looked past him toward the village she had just left behind. The place that rejected her. The place she had protected. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then slowly, she turned back toward Agbọn Village. Behind her, the watchers moved with her faster now, their glow intensifying as the unseen force beneath the earth began to push harder against its weakening prison. In the village, the crack widened, the ground trembled violently, and from the darkness below, something began to rise. Not fully seen, but deeply felt. Mama Aduni fell to her knees, her voice breaking for the first time. We were wrong. Her words were swallowed by the growing chaos. And far beyond the fear, beyond the cries, beyond the shaking earth, Sade was already running back. Because now, there was no more time for doubt, only consequence. They say when truth is finally seen, it often comes wrapped in the consequences of disbelief. In Agbọn Village, the truth did not arrive gently. It came with trembling earth, with cries that echoed through broken trust, and with a darkness that no one could deny anymore. By the time Sade reached the edge of the village, the air itself felt heavy, thick with fear, regret, and something far older than all of them. The ground near the shrine had split wide open, the crack glowing faintly, as if the earth itself was trying to breathe out something it had held for too long. Villagers stumbled back, some falling, others frozen, where they stood unable to move, unable to understand. And at the center of it all, Mama Aduni. She knelt in the dust, her proud shoulders now shaking, her eyes wide, not with anger, but with realization. We drove her away, she whispered. Baba Seagun stood nearby, his staff pressed firmly into the ground, his voice urgent but steady. Then pray she has not gone too far. A sudden gust of wind swept through the village. But this time, it did not feel hostile. It felt like something returning. All heads turned. And there she was, Sade. Walking back into the village she had every reason to leave behind. Kunlay followed close behind her, his eyes filled with both fear and hope. She came back, someone whispered. Why would she return? Another asked. But Baba Seagun already knew. Because she was never protecting herself, he said quietly. She was protecting all of you. Sade stepped toward the cracked earth, her face calm, though the glow beneath her feet pulsed stronger now, like a heartbeat trying to break free. The watchers appeared again, clearer than ever before. Tall, radiant figures, encircling her, their presence, pushing back against the rising darkness, but they were struggling. Sade took a deep breath. For the first time, she did not hold back. I have carried you long enough, she whispered, not to the villagers, but to what lay within. The ground trembled violently. The darkness surged upward, but only for a moment. Then Sade stepped forward, and everything stilled. The light from the watchers flared, wrapping around her like a shield, like chains, like something both protective and binding at once. The crack in the earth began to close, slowly, painfully, as if sealing something that did not want to be contained again. Sade's body trembled, but she did not step back. Kunlay took a step forward. Sade, do not come closer, she said firmly. Her voice was stronger now, not soft, not hidden, but powerful. The earth gave one final shudder. Then, silence. The glow faded, the crack sealed, the darkness retreated, and just like that, it was over. Sade remained standing, though her breathing was heavier, now her strength clearly drained. The watchers slowly faded, their task fulfilled once more. The village stood in stunned silence. No whispers, no accusations, only truth. Mama Aduni rose slowly, her steps unsteady as she approached Sade. The woman who once spoke with pride now lowered herself to her knees. I did not see you, she said, her voice breaking. I only saw my fear. Tears fell freely down her face. Forgive me. Sade looked at her for a long moment. Then she spoke. Fear is not the enemy, she said gently. But when it becomes louder than truth, it destroys what was meant to protect you. Mama Aduni bowed her head. The other villagers followed, one by one. Not out of obligation, but out of understanding. Kunlay stepped closer, his voice soft. Will you stay, Sade? Looked around the village, the same place that had rejected her, blamed her, feared her, and yet also the place she had chosen to protect. I will stay, she said, but not as someone you fear. She met their eyes, as someone you understand. And so Agbọn Village changed, not overnight, but deeply. They learned to question their fear, to listen before judging, to look beyond what is seen, because they would never forget the day they nearly destroyed their own protector. They say, not everything that walks with shadows belongs to darkness. And sometimes, the one you fear the most is the one holding your world together. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. And leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your voice is part of this journey.